There's no greater feeling than to win your first ever NASCAR Cup Series race, especially at one of the most historic tracks on the schedule and the world's fastest half mile. Hey there, race fans. It's Race 8 Top 5 with me, Frank 5. Bristol Motor Speedway, the world's fastest half mile, Thunder Valley, the concrete last great coliseum of racing. It has so many names to it, and it provides great entertainment for the fans. The drivers, it depends on which way you want to ask them, if they're having good days or they're having not so good days. But Bristol brings out the best and the worst. And sometimes it can allow drivers to have an opportunity to score big. And yesterday, one young man, after the last couple years of trying, has finally become a winner in the NASCAR Cup Series. Let's talk about all that happened yesterday at Bristol. Number one, Gibbs finally seals the deal. Ty Gibbs, at long last, is a NASCAR Cup Series winner as he won yesterday's Food City 500 at Bristol Motor Speedway, beating out Ryan Blaney in a photo finish. By the way, photo finish, pretty good finish right there. Then Kyle Larson, Tyler Reddick, and Chase Briscoe finishing out the top 5. After many, many years of wondering, when is this kid going to finally break through? It's not a matter of if, it was a matter of when Ty Gibbs was going to win a race, because a lot of his his fans, his family, his crew members, his critiques as far as people that have criticized him, or maybe even the people that are covering the sport, have been wondering, when is he going to finally win a NASCAR Cup Series race? Yesterday, he finally sealed the deal, winning at Bristol Motor Speedway. He qualified inside the top 10, then quickly fell back at the start of the race because he was stuck on the high line, because at the beginning of that race, there was not a lot of grip on the top lane. So he was able to finally get his way to the bottom of the racetrack, right there for a little bit, then was able to pick off a few guys one by one. As we got further on through the race, he was able to get back inside the top 10, and by the time we got into the final stage, he became a factor inside the top 5, and he was keeping up with the two best cars for a lot of the day yesterday in Kyle Larson and Ryan Blaney. He had good pace in that 54 car, and he is pretty good at Bristol Motor Speedway, as indicative as it was in last year's fall race, where he looked like he was going to finally win his first race, but he made a mistake coming onto pit road, and to make matters worse, he had a right front tire go down, so it pretty much killed his opportunity to try to win. But yesterday, he was able to hang with the big boys. He was able to get up to second place with about 100 laps to go, and he was doing everything he possibly could in the closing laps of that race to run down Ryan Blaney, the leader, to try to get the win from him. Of course, they both had to negotiate themselves through the lap traffic of drivers that were not having good runs, or they were not as fast as that 12 and 54 car were. Well, then when the caution came up with about 25 laps to go for the 9-car Chase Elliott spinning out in turn 2, that made a lot of decisions to be up for grabs as far as what do you want to do for strategy to the end of this race. A lot of the lead lap cars came onto pit road, but Ty Gibbs and the 54 team, they elected to stay out and not come in and put on tires, because they felt like with the amount of laps left in the race, there wasn't a need to come in for tires at all. So they stayed out. A couple of other guys stayed out as well to give them a little bit of a security blanket. So we got the restart. Gibbs got a good launch, but then behind him comes Tyler Reddick in the 45 car, making a challenge for the lead. And then before you know it, here comes the 5 and the 12 after Gibbs. They gave it everything they had those closing couple laps, but couldn't get by the 54 car. And it looked like it was going to be a cakewalk home on those old tires. Until the other Monster Energy car, Riley Herbst, spun around on the front stretch after contact from Kyle Busch due to a previous incident of the race. It set up NASCAR overtime and gave Ryan Blaney, who, albeit had some laps on the tires that he put on, was on the inside of Ty Gibbs with an opportunity to try to win. So they had the restart in overtime, and Ty Gibbs did not give in whatsoever, no matter how hard Ryan Blaney tried to get alongside him and maybe try to rough him up a little bit. Gibbs held his own and was able to deliver his first Cup Series win. An emotional win for Ty Gibbs to finally get your first win after the last couple of years, and what a journey it has been for him to win for his grandfather, Joe Gibbs, who owns his race team and owns his car, for his mom, who's been one of his big supporters since he got into a race car, for the team that has stuck with him through the good and the bad times. And it was an emotional one for so many reasons, because we know that Ty Gibbs came into the early scene in the Cup Series and the O'Reilly Series in the early 2020s, where he ran part-time in 21, won a couple of races in the O'Reilly Series, including his first ever O'Reilly Series race at Daytona in the road course race. And then he got full-time in the O'Reilly Series in 22, where he won the championship. It was a big moment for him, while also splitting opportunity in the Cup Series as a relief driver over at 2311 Racing because of the situation with Kurt Busch. But as great as the championship was for Ty Gibbs in 2022, a couple hours later he would face a big tragedy as his father, Coy Gibbs, son of Joe Gibbs, passed away in his sleep hours after he celebrated with his son winning the championship. His dad passes away, and it leaves a big hole in Ty Gibbs' heart. Very, very sad. Very sad. No one deserves to lose their father, especially after accomplishing something very, very big. So then he gets to the Cup Series full-time in 2023. Doesn't make the playoffs his first year, but does win Rookie of the Year honors. And he had some good runs in 23. In 24, he got better by having some more top 5, top 10 finishes. And he was able to make the playoffs that year, but he was an early round elimination. Then after that, things went bad. They had so many bad runs with really bad race cars. Things completely out of their control, parts falling apart. It was not a good stretch for Ty Gibbs at the end of 24 after he got eliminated from the playoffs. And then he carried over to the start of 2025. Things were not going their way, and he had a new crew chief at the time as well. But then by the end of 25, momentum started to build back for the 54 team as they were competing well. They were running up front. Ty Gibbs was getting more and more consistent. And despite the first 2 races of the season at Daytona, Atlanta not going his way with rough results, ever since then, he has been unbelievable, finishing inside the top 10. His worst finish in these last couple races was a 6th place result. Ever since the top 5 at COTA, this team has been hot. They have been the team that's been flying under the radar with consistency, continuing to compete with the big dogs as far as champions and veterans of the sport in the top teams. And Gibbs, running for one of the top teams in NASCAR, gives him the opportunity to compete with these guys and show he does belong. After all the critiquing and all the guesses about when is he going to finally win, he's now a Cup Series winner. And if I'm going maybe a little bit against the grain here, is it too early to possibly say Ty Gibbs is a championship contender because of the consistency they've been on these last couple of weeks, with the way that they're hanging up there in the points with champions like Ryan Blaney, Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, the top stars of Denny Hamlin, who's been close so many times to a championship, Christopher Bell, Tyler Reddick. He has just been so consistent these last couple of races. And now that he's finally got the win, how many more can this kid score this season, perhaps? Can he get a few more and get in that conversation for people that may still have question marks? We shall see. But you can't take away the drive and the effort that he put together yesterday to finally get that long-awaited Cup Series win. So a big congratulations to Ty Gibbs and the 54 team. Finally, he is a winner in the Cup Series. Number 2, dominant but faltered to the end. The 2 guys to beat yesterday's race were Ryan Blaney in the 12 car and the 5 of Kyle Larson. They were the class of the field, aside from what Ty Gibbs was able to put together at the end. These 2 guys had the field in their grasp. Starting first with the 12 car of Ryan Blaney, who started on the pole for the race yesterday at a track where he's been so good at in the past, but just hadn't seemed to put together the luck that he needed to finally win at Bristol, because he's not yet won at this racetrack. And his previous best finish coming into yesterday was a 4th place result 3 times. But yesterday, they had a very, very good race car running up in the top 5, leading a lot of the laps early on. Then they lost the lead to the 5 car, but still played second fiddle pretty much the majority of that race behind the 5 car. And then in the final stage, when Larson's tires started to fall off from him, Ryan Blaney took control of the lead and was able to run away most of the time. And even though he got stuck in a lot of that lap traffic, the latter part of the race, he still held his ground. Then he decided, when that caution came out for the 9 car spinning, to come on pit road, get those 4 tires, and try to make a charge at the very end. And it took up a couple laps, but when he was able to weave his way through the traffic, he got up towards the front of the field to challenge Ty Gibbs in the 54 car. And I keep thinking, have the bump and run ready to go, dude. But that's not really Ryan Blaney's driving style. He's a lot cleaner race car driver than putting a bump and run or moving a guy out of the way, that type of style. That's not how Ryan Blaney races people. He just tried the best he could on the bottom of the track with the fresher tires that he had, even though he got some temperature in those tires in those closing laps when we were running green. He gave it everything he had, but just couldn't do enough. And despite that last opportunity in overtime, it still couldn't work out for Ryan Blaney and the 12th team. But it was a great result to have a really good day at Bristol. I will say, though, there were some problems in the race, and they were on pit road. I'm serious. How many times am I going to continue to say this? If this 12 team, who is a championship contender because of how consistent Blaney is and how good of a race car driver is, how much longer are we going to hold this team at the championship caliber with the problems that they're having on pit road right now? Slow stops, losing time. They were able to get back a lot of those spots on restarts, thankfully, because of how good Blaney's car was. But they can't keep having problems on pit road. I've been saying this. When is it going to get in their heads that they continuously need to find a way to not have problems? Because this is a trend. You keep having problems on pit road, it keeps going and going and going and going until it just is completely out of your control. They've got to find a way to have better stops on pit road. They had a great result. They had a great car. They had a chance of the win. But once again, I'm seeing the cracks in this team, and it involves pit road. Then we go to Kyle Larson, the 5 car, who was dubbed the guy coming in, the guy to beat, because he's so good here. He smacked the field last year. He dominated the fall race 2 years ago. Larson knows how to get around Bristol, and yesterday was no different. Led the most laps at 284 laps. Won both stages, so that's 20 points total that he accumulated yesterday to go along with the points based off of his race finish. The 5 car was so fast yesterday, but in those closing laps of the race, with about 150 laps to go, I could see the strength that Kyle Larson had, even over Ryan Blaney and the rest of the guys, was beginning to fade, because I could see the back end of the 5 car. Yes, Kyle Larson loves to hang it loose, but I think that the last couple laps of this race, the right rear tires that he was racing on were starting to skid really, really fast, and he was losing control of his car to the point where he lost control of the lead and ultimately the race win. Now, caution, the last pit stop that he came in for, he elected to go with right side tires to get him an edge over the 12 car and think maybe I'll still have a chance at the 54 car. He didn't really have a chance, but I just think with not a lot of grip on the left side tires, with how hot they were, the amount of laps he had on them, versus the right sides, which gives you some grip, but it doesn't balance well, especially when you get a couple more laps on those tires. They start to blend evenly with each other. There was not really a good chance for the 5 car of Larson to get up there and get the win. And we are closing in on 1 year since he last went to victory lane in the Cup Series, yet we know he won the championship last year, but that was because of some late race, circumstances that affected really Denny Hamlin, and it benefited Kyle Larson with the strategy they took. But the 5 car, they've got to get to victory lane. I know they can, and I know they will, but they've got to do it because points matter with this format. And they gained a lot of points yesterday, but a win would have been the nice cherry on top of how good they were yesterday. So despite dominating yesterday, Blaney and Larson had to finish 2nd and 3rd, but still, they put on a great show yesterday. Number 3, Reddick with a top 5 after a penalty. Yesterday, another driver that had a great result was the guy that has been leading the points since his win in the Daytona 500 in Tyler Reddick. Coming home with a 4th place result yesterday, a great run for the 45 team on a short track where we have documented a lot this year because of how they were kind of off on short tracks last year, that they have to find a way to get better and more consistent at these shorter tracks, either winning them, finishing in the top 5, top 10, at least competing on a regular basis on these shorter tracks, especially with some of them in the chase. Yesterday, Reddick was able to do that. And they had a good car early on, qualified up in the top 5. They had good pace early on in the race, but then I think it was on the first pit stop of the race at lap 61, Tyler Reddick got caught for speeding on pit road and dropped into the back of the field, and it was pretty much the question mark about could he work his way back up there, because with this car at Bristol, passing people, especially with how deep in the field you are, and your car handles much differently up there versus maybe if you're obviously the leader, or you're maybe 2nd, 3rd, 4th, or 5th on the racetrack. Your car handles differently. But Reddick was still able to pick his way through the field. It did take him at least 150 plus laps for him to try to get back up there further to where he was running. He got up to the top 15 by the end, I think, stage 2. And then in the final stage, he cracked the top 10 and then got back in the top 5. And as I mentioned, when that next to last restart, he was digging at Ty Gibbs for the win at the very end there. But I think the same amount of laps of tires that he had versus the 54 and how good the top was at the end of the race, Reddick couldn't do a whole lot and eventually got passed by the 5 and the 12. But still, a great recovery from the speeding penalty to finish inside the top 5 and give it a great result in the short track program. Need to see a little more consistency and need to see more of these good results from him on these short tracks that we keep going to on the schedule, like North Wilkesboro, and of course, when we go to Martinsville in the fall, Bristol here in the fall race. Keep having more of those good results, Tyler Reddick, and I think we're going to be feeling pretty good about his chances at the championship come the fall. Number 4, Gilliland with a top 10. While everybody was celebrating Ty Gibbs' first win yesterday, another young man had a great result yesterday in the form of Todd Gilliland and Front Row Motorsports with a 6th place result, a great performance by the 34 team. How did it get to this point for Todd Gilliland? Well, he qualified terrible, I think about 35th spot yesterday, and he was one of the cars back there that just couldn't go anywhere because of the track conditions the way they were. Everybody was running the bottom of the early part because that was where the grip was the most until we got further on the race where the top lane started to really come into play. Gilliland was stuck back there for a lot of the race. He got a lap down. He was there for most of the time. I think he got back in the lead lap through a wave around. Nearly got involved in a wreck in turn number 4, but didn't sustain any damage at all. He carried on, and then before you know it, I saw him crack the top 15. I'm like, okay, that's pretty good. This guy's doing some things. Then, with about, I think, 120 laps to go, 120 plus laps left, the 34 team elected to take 2 tires during one of the pit stops under caution and got him in the top 5. So I'm thinking this is a good strategy call, but let's see how he handles the rest of this run here, if he could stay up there or if his car maybe fades. It didn't fade. He stayed in the top 5 on that restart and was doing a really good job. Then as we got further on the run, I could tell that the tires that he took with the right sides was starting to come into play, and he started to lose some spots from there on, but still was able to maintain the top 10 running position at the time, and of course pitted with a lot of the rest of the leaders on that next to last caution of the race. He came down, got his tires, and was able to hang with the guys, and he came out with a 6th place result. A good run for Todd and the 34 team, their first top 10 of the season. And remember, this team, the Front Row team, the organization, was part of the antitrust lawsuit with 2311 Racing versus NASCAR last year, but they were too able to get back their charters. There have been a few good moments from some of their drivers this year. We've seen some good runs from Zane Smith. Noah Gragson has been mad despite a top 15 in the 500, and Noah did nearly run the top 10 yesterday at times before his car faded late, but Todd Gilliland was just kind of hanging around, and that's what he's been doing for a lot of the races this season. But yesterday was by far their best performance of the season. Good to see kind of the team that has gotten better over the years, but not necessarily the budget like a Penske, a Hendrick, a Gibbs, or even now a 2311. To see these guys run the top 10 finishing there, very impressive stuff. So a great job by Todd Gilliland, the 34 team. Love the 2-tire gamble to get them in the top 5 and stay in there and finish inside the top 10. Great job by the 34 team. And number 5, the racing at Bristol yesterday. We've seen this next-gen car have its good moments, but not so good moments at Bristol when it comes to the racing product. Last year's spring race was just bad. It wasn't competitive. It was follow the leader and Kyle Larson for a lot of that race and not a lot of action going on despite us putting that traction compound on the bottom surface. The fall race, we didn't really need to put the traction compound down too much, even though some guys were able to run down there. We had a lot of tire fall off in that race last year, making for a very entertaining race. Yesterday's race, we had the traction compound on a hot spring day at Bristol, and I was wondering what type of racing would we see. So for the majority of the race early on, the bottom lane was the place to be. But then as we got further in the race, I saw some guys start to work the high side, make some runs up there, and start to pass a few guys when they were racing for position on the racetrack. And I think that yesterday we got a good balance of the bottom lane can work, the top lane can also work. There was some good racing yesterday at Bristol. Now, was it the best with this next-gen car? No, and I think that the spring race from 2 years ago with that tire fall, that has been the best race with this car by far. But yesterday's race was still really good. I liked the product that I saw. There were, of course, the guys that dominated with Larson and Blaney, but there were a lot of comers and goers yesterday, as I mentioned. Reddick ran up front, had his penalty, was able to get back up there. Joey Logano qualified mediocre, but he was able to work his way up further through the pack as the race progressed and got a top 10. We had you guys run up there, start the race like Ross Chastain and Riley Herbst run well, then later the race, they faded. There were a lot of guys that went back and forth for the most part in yesterday's race, but I felt like it was really good. Now, was there a lot of tire fall off? No, but I did see a lot of guys fight their race cars yesterday, basically looser race cars, I think more so than tight race cars, because I saw some of these guys, the back ends off the corner, on corner exit, was skating. I mean, those cars were a little bit out of control up there. But in general, I really liked the racing that we had yesterday, and maybe we'll see that transition when we come back here in the fall when it's the night race. But it was, in general, a good race for the Cup guys yesterday at Bristol. Also, want to welcome back Alex Bowman to the 48 car. It was announced later in the week that Bowman would return to the 48 car after sitting out the last 4 races dealing with vertigo. If you all remember, at COTA, Bowman climbed out of the race car in the later going of the race because he was feeling unwell, he was feeling dizzy, and those are symptoms of vertigo. So he had to sit out the next 4 races while Anthony Alfredo ran the car at Phoenix, and then Justin Allgaier ran the 48 car the previous 3 events. Bowman got back in the car this weekend, which I thought was a little bit interesting, and I thought, honestly, we were going to have to wait another week, but I think with the Easter break that we had allowed him to recover with them not running and then being able to come back for this week at a track where he has one of his best average finishes. To make a long story short, as good as it was to see him back in the car, didn't really perform well early on, qualifying mid-pack, and unfortunately on lap 160 they got caught up in a wreck in turn 4 with John Hunter Nemechek and Shane Van Gisbergen and left Bowman finishing in 36th place. Honestly, that's been the tale of the season so far, aside from missing a couple races. They have had not a lot of good results, and it's really, really sad, especially for a guy who's in a contract year. It's good to have him back in the car, but the goal for him to even have a realistic chance of making the chase, they got to do a lot better. They got to get more consistent, and I know he's just coming off of dealing with vertigo, but this is a relatively rough time for him. But nonetheless, great to have Alex Bowman back in the car yesterday. Now we're off to our second official 1.5-mile track of the season next weekend in Kansas. That track, the last couple years with this car, has put on some amazing racing with guys changing lanes left and right, different grooves being run, fighting up front, 3 wide, mid-pack, good battles all around. And last year's races, particularly that fall race, that was a lot of fun to watch, especially with the overtime restarts and the dash for Chase Elliott to go from 10th to 1st in 2 laps was unbelievable. So, will we have some great racing this upcoming Sunday at Kansas? My heart and head says yes. I think we're in for a great race, but I think it will be the normal contenders that you see at this track running up front again next week. The Hendrick guys, the Gibbs guys, and the 2311 guys. If those Penske guys like Ryan Blaney, Joey Logano, and even Austin Cindric can work on their cars and compete with those guys, we could have a big battle of the 4 powerhouses of the Cup Series. So what type of action will we get next week? You got to tune in to find out. So I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week, and I hope everybody had a great Easter last Sunday, being time with family and friends and not having to watch the Cup Series for a weekend, and got back in the racing this weekend, and now we're off to Kansas. So hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week. Subscribe, like, and congrats once again to Ty Gibbs, a first-time winner in the Cup Series, taking victory yesterday at Bristol. Have a great week, everybody. Let's go racing!